Winter is here, and every year in the fall, millions of birds pack their bags, wave goodbye to their summer homes, and embark on epic journeys spanning thousands of miles. These tiny creatures travel distances that would leave most of us complaining about cramped airplane seats and overpriced airport snacks. And the craziest part? They do it without GPS, Google Maps, or even stopping to ask for directions.
Buenas tardes, perdona, para Bolonia? Venga, gracias.
So, how do they pull it off? Let's start with the basics. Why do birds even migrate in the first place? It's simple, really. Food. No, not that type of food, but this type. Birds don't migrate because they're thrill seekers or have an innate desire to post on Instagram. They migrate because seasonal changes make their current homes less hospitable. As temperatures drop and food sources become scarce, birds head to greener pastures. Literally, where they can find more abundant resources. Think of it as nature's version of snowbirds heading to Florida for the winter. But food isn't the only reason. Some species migrate to find better nesting grounds or to escape predators that have become more active in certain seasons. It's all about survival. And unlike humans, who spend hours debating whether to splurge on business class, birds don't have a choice. If they stay put, they risk starving or freezing. So, off they go. Now, here's where it gets interesting. How do birds know where to go? They've got no map, no smartphone, and absolutely not a GPS. Yet somehow, these birds can travel thousands of miles to the exact same tree they visited last year. Scientists call this navigational precision. I just call it a sense of direction. Ironic, considering they fly into billboards all the time. One explanation is that birds use landmarks to guide them. Rivers, mountains, and coastlines serve as natural road signs, helping them stay on course. But landmarks only work if you've been there before. So, how do first-time migrants figure it out? Turns out, birds have an internal GPS that puts ours to shame. First up, there's the sun compass. Many birds can tell time and direction by observing the position of the sun in the sky. If it's early morning and the sun is on their left, they know they're heading south. If it's late afternoon and the sun's on their right, they're still heading south. Simple enough, right? Except, of course, on cloudy days. Then what? Enter the star compass. Yes, some birds literally navigate by the stars, just like ancient humans did on voyages over the seas. During nighttime migrations, they use constellations like a cosmic map. Researchers have even conducted experiments where they placed birds in planetariums and shifted the stars around. The birds adjusted their flight paths accordingly, as if they were saying, nah, I'd win. But wait, what about if during the day the sun is hiding and at night clouds block the stars? That's where the Earth's magnetic field comes in. Birds have a special protein in their eyes called cryptochrome, which allows them to see magnetic fields. It's like having built-in night vision goggles, but for geomagnetic vibes. Scientists still don't fully understand how this works, but the general consensus is that birds are navigating using an invisible force that humans can't even perceive. No big deal. And it doesn't stop there. Some birds are thought to have an incredible sense of smell that helps them recognize familiar scents along their routes. Others might use infrasound, low-frequency sound waves produced by things like ocean waves and mountain winds to orient themselves. Essentially, birds have an entire toolbox of navigational tricks that makes your average GPS look like a cheap knockoff. But the question remains, how do they know when to leave? Do they wake up one day and think, wow, it's getting chilly, time to hit the road? Not exactly. Bird migration is triggered by a combination of environmental cues, like temperature changes, daylight length, and internal biological clocks. These clocks are driven by hormones, which ramp up as migration season approaches. It's like nature's way of setting a reminder. Pack your bags, time to fly south. The actual journey, however, is anything but easy. For starters, birds can't just book a direct flight. Migration routes are often full of detours, harsh weather, and predators. Some species, like the Arctic tern, fly over 40,000 miles round trip every year, crossing oceans and continents in the process. That's like running a marathon every day for weeks on end. Meanwhile, I'm out of breath after walking up a flight of stairs. One of the biggest challenges birds face is energy management. Flying non-stop for hours or even days requires an incredible amount of fuel. Birds prepare for migration by gorging themselves on food, storing fat reserves that will power the entire journey. This is known as hyperphagia, or in human terms, the bulking season. Some birds can double their body weight in preparation for migration. It's like eating an entire Thanksgiving dinner every day for weeks, except instead of feeling sluggish, you become an aerodynamic powerhouse. Even with these reserves, many birds still have to make pit stops along the way. These stopover sites are crucial for refueling, resting, and avoiding total exhaustion. Wetlands, forests, and coastal areas often serve as migration rest stops. Unfortunately, habitat loss has made these pit stops increasingly scarce, putting many bird species at risk. And then there's the weather. Birds don't have weather apps to warn them about incoming storms, so they rely on their finely tuned instincts. Some species can detect changes in barometric pressure, which helps them anticipate bad weather. Others are just really good at reading the sky. Either way, flying through a hurricane is generally not on their itinerary. And of course, not all migrations go smoothly. Birds can get lost, blown off course, or even hit man-made obstacles like buildings and wind turbines. Light pollution is another major problem, as it can disorient nocturnal migrants and lead them astray. Despite their incredible navigational skills, even birds aren't immune to the chaos of modern life. But perhaps the most mind-blowing aspect of bird migration is how it's passed down through generations. Some species migrate in flocks, where older, more experienced birds guide the younger ones. Other species, like the bar-tailed godwit, which sounds like a straight out of Elden Ring by the way, rely entirely on instinct. Yes, even birds that have never migrated before somehow know exactly where to go. It's like the route is somehow preloaded into their DNA. But these preloaded routes adapt to changes over time. For instance, some bird populations have shifted their migration paths due to climate change, habitat destruction, or other environmental factors. Despite these challenges, their instincts seem to adjust, letting them chart new courses when their traditional routes no longer work. Just like Google Maps, they get real-time updates, except they don't hear recalculating every time they have to take a detour. But I don't think I've really emphasized the physical toll of migration just yet. These birds aren't just gliding on a breeze, they're pushing their bodies to the limit. Some species, like the ruby-throated hummingbird, can fly non-stop for up to 18 hours across the Gulf of Mexico. And remember the Arctic tern I mentioned earlier? It holds the record for the longest migration, traveling over 44,000 miles annually. I think if anyone deserves frequent flyer status, it's those guys. They travel the equivalent of circling the Earth twice. Migration isn't just beneficial to birds. To us humans, it's also a key driver of biodiversity. As birds travel between regions, they help spread seeds, pollinate plants, and maintain the ecological balance. Without these birds, many ecosystems would collapse, leaving us with far fewer avocados, almonds, and other crops that rely on their cross-continental pit stops. When it comes time for spring, the blooming flowers will have birds to thank for pollination. And at that point, the birds turn around and do it all over again, heading back to their breeding grounds. It's an endless cycle of survival for the birds, looking for food and resources in the warmer weather while keeping the ecosystems balanced. So, what can we learn from bird migration? Well, for one, I have a newfound respect for these so-called government spies. Tell me I have to find my way south at the right time and go in the right direction without any GPS or map assistance, and I'd end up in Europe somehow. And the fact that our little avian friends know where to go from the moment they're born, like it's some Earth DLC I never got, baffles me. But hey, at least we have Apple Maps for the win. So yeah, this is how birds manage to migrate thousands of miles every year in theory. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Please make sure to leave a like down below if so, and if you'd like to see more content like this, where I explain things in a simple way like I understand them, then go ahead and subscribe because I've got a lot more content coming. See you next time.